While my younger sisters were starting children, I spent the last 5 years advancing my career as a manager at Preston Technologies, one of Austin's fastest growing tech companies, so I refused to be the family's default babysitter when they planned a vacation for Mom's 60th birthday without even consulting me. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy my job and the path I've chosen, but occasionally I wonder if I missed something along the way. No husband, no kids, just me in my corner office overlooking when my phone rang on a typical Tuesday morning in downtown Austin. Lauren, 25F, appeared on the screen. I answered, "Hey Ash, have you got a minute?" as I was organizing my desk quarterly performance assessments. Lauren asked over the speaker, "Hey Ash, have you got a minute?" I pushed some papers aside and half listened while reviewing the figures. "You know Mom is turning 60 in 2 months, right?" She paused for emphasis. "We're planning something special and we need everyone to chip in." That caught my attention. Talking about Lauren, I nearly choked on my coffee when she mentioned that the amount was more than I had spent on my last vacation, which was 3 years ago. Lauren quickly added, "But it's for Mom. No, it's fine." I replied, "I'm already opening my banking app. I'll transfer it right now." "Great. Oh, and take a week off work to celebrate. Don't schedule anything else during that time." The following few weeks went by in a flurry of meetings and deadlines, and I occasionally wondered what my sisters were planning with all that money. Mom's birthday eventually faded into the background as work took over. On Saturday, we all gathered at our parents' house for dinner. Dad told us the same old jokes about Texas football. Mom worried about everyone's plates, and Laura dropped her bomb, so she kept pushing her grilled asparagus around her plate when everyone else was there. We finally planned everything for Mom's birthday, and were spending the week at Mountain Pine Resort in Colorado. The table was filled with excited conversation, and Mom was beaming. Dad was already talking about going to the slopes, and my sisters were discussing which ski lines they wanted to try. "Why hadn't anyone told me sooner?" I said, feeling left out. "I don't even have a ski suit, and there's barely any time to get one." The table became too quiet, and my stomach dropped before she opened her mouth. She started off by using that tone when she asked for a favor that I knew I couldn't refuse. "We were hoping that you could watch the kids while we were there." I looked at my family gathered around the dinner table, waiting for someone to laugh and tell us that it was all a joke. But the silence continued, only to be broken by the faint clatter of cutlery on plates. When I finally asked all 5 of them, my mind started counting them off mechanically. Lauren, toddler Noah, Isabel's baby Lily, and Anna are twins born to cousin Nathan and Daniel's child Leo. Mom said, "You're so good with them," as if that clarified everything. They adore their Aunt Ashley. I glanced around the table again, hoping to see a laugh, but there were only eager looks waiting for my standard yes, but it's unfair. I caught myself saying, my voice sounded unusual to my own ears. I wanted to celebrate with everyone too, because it's Mom's birthday. My middle sister Isabella, 23, sighed as she put down her fork. "Come on, Ashley, you will be bored there anyway." My chest tightened as she said, "You're wonderful with the kids. They adore you. And let's be honest, you don't need a break from family life." Lauren jumped in, her voice carrying the condescending tone she had developed over the years. "She simply meant that you don't have children or a husband to escape from like the rest of us do. Do we need a break? You understand, right?" The green beans on my plate blurred as I blinked away tears. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of Ashley's voice being worried, but not enough to stop me from silently pushing back my chair and standing up. I took my purse from the counter and made my way to the door without saying anything. No one tried to stop me or yelled at me. All I could hear was Mom's voice drifting from the dining room. "Don't worry, she'll be a little offended at first, but she'll come around, as she always does." As I continued to walk towards my car, their voices faded behind me, already discussing ski slopes and winter clothing. The evening air felt cool against my face. The worst part wasn't the babysitting request. Rather, it was the casualness with which they assumed I would agree. They planned this entire event without me using my money, time, or vacation days without even asking, as if I were just a resource to be used. For half a night, I paced around my downtown apartment, replaying every family meal, every holiday, and every time I put aside my personal needs to help someone else. Since tonight's events, each memory has taken on a darker meaning. At 16, I was preparing dinner while my mother helped Isabella with her homework. At 18, I declined a spring break trip with friends to watch Lauren while our parents went on a weekend excursion. At 21, Isabella worked 2 jobs in college to help pay for her prom dress. The pictures kept coming every year. "Ashley, could you watch Noah for a few hours?" Lauren's voice kept echoing in my head. "I really need a break, Ashley. Would you mind taking the night?" Nathan's standard request, "Twin for the weekend," came back like a broken record. "Sophie's overwhelmed, and you're so good with kids." I had always said yes, even though I had important meetings the next day. I took pride in being the dependable sister, the responsible daughter, and the ideal daughter. I sank on my couch, the leather cool against my skin, and the photo albums on my coffee table caught my attention on family vacations. I was always the one behind the camera during holiday celebrations, where I was always in the kitchen, everyone. Other people laughed in the living room. When was the last time someone asked me what I wanted? It's not like you need a break from family life. Lauren's words kept coming back to me as though my decisions and career were somehow less legitimate because I wasn't married and didn't have kids, as if all of my sacrifices weren't worth it because they didn't fit their definition of what was important. That night, I tossed and turned, remembering how I had worked through college on a scholarship and how I began my job right. After graduation, I helped pay for both of my sisters' educations, worked late into the night, climbed the corporate ladder, and sent home a portion of my paycheck to help with family expenses. Dawn had convinced me that there had to be a way to resolve this amicably, so they would understand without causing family strife. So I did what I always did when there was a problem. I waited until a suitable hour on Sunday morning to pick up my phone, and when my mother answered on the third ring, I said, "Hello, Mom." Hatchley, Mom finally said in a tense voice, "We can't trust a stranger with our children. They are used to you, Mom. I want to be a part of the celebration as well." I had been thinking about the resort trip. I actually have a solution. I will pay for a professional babysitter for all 5 children so that everyone may enjoy the festivities together. I explained that I wanted to be there for your birthday and that I could find a great babysitter with excellent references. But you're no team a social butterfly. But she interrupted me with a tone that said, "You probably feel uneasy with all the noise and commotion anyway. The kids will keep you occupied, and you'll enjoy spending time with them. It's ideal for everyone." Before I could react, I heard the call end, and I sat there with my phone still pressed against my ear. My mother's remarks sank in, and I realized that this was more than just a birthday excursion. It was about years of taking me for granted and expecting that I'd always be available forever. Answer: yes, always put the needs of others before your own. Maybe it was time to prove them wrong. I was still thinking about my mother's abrupt phone call when Lauren's name flashed on the screen. Before I could say hello, Mom, she growled, "Are you trying to ruin everything?" Her harsh tone made me sit up straighter. Why am I trying to find a solution that works for everyone? We've already got a solution. Ashley, you're being completely selfish by trying to change all of our plans at the last minute. Am I being selfish? Yes, you are. We've been planning this for weeks, and everyone is excited. The resort has been rented, and the activities have been planned, and now you want to throw a wrench in everything because you can't just do one thing for your family. I started, but she interrupted me again. What if you ruin this trip for everyone? If you ruin Mom's birthday party? Don't tell me again, Ashley. Went dead, and I sat stunned by my baby sister's threat. Then my phone rang again, this time with text from Isabella. My hands were shaking, and she said, "Everyone helps each other out. Remember how I covered your work event last year while you were sick? The kids adore you. Why can't you just stop being resentful and focus on what is best for the family?" My fingers rushed across the keyboard as I replied. A real family does not take advantage of one another. Instead, they respect each other's wishes and include everyone in their lives. Activities that a true family does not manipulate or guilt-trip one another. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times, but when I received no response, something inside of me changed. They asked for money without specifying what it was for, and they carefully told me to take time off work without mentioning the resort. They casually mentioned their plans at dinner as though they had planned this all along while I worked late into the night while watching their kids. Being the perfect daughter and sister, they clandestinely planned this trip, used my money, set up my schedule, and intended to dump 5 children on me. They didn't say a word, and since I wasn't following their plan, they tried every manipulation tactic they could think of, including guilt threats, emotional blackmail, and threats. However, something strange happens when you finally see through the fog of manipulation, and all of a sudden everything is crystal clear. I felt lighter than I had in years, and the shame that had been crushing me was replaced by the decision to do something else. So I opened my laptop and started looking. Within an hour, I had booked a beachside hotel in Florida. It wasn't fancy, but it had a balcony that looked out over the ocean, and I could walk to anything I might need. I'd even bought a first-class plane ticket. I had a lot of money because I would be skiing, so the next few days at work were incredibly peaceful. My family stopped calling and texting, probably thinking I was at home getting ready for a week of childcare, planning to buy extra snacks, and making other arrangements. Activities. This idea made me smile. I packed my beach clothes in a new swimsuit and left for a tropical trip in the middle of winter. My coworker Janet asked me after she saw me check the Florida weather forecast And I replied, "Sometimes you have to do something unexpected." I was shocked at how wonderful it felt to say those things out loud. On the morning of my flight, I took one last look around my apartment. I had cleaned everything meticulously out of habit, so I suppose the refrigerator was empty, the windows were securely locked, and everything was in ideal condition as usual, with the exception of I was heading to the airport when Aunt Susan's final message appeared, saying, "The kids are really delighted to spend time with their favorite aunt. Do not disappoint them." I felt guilty, but then I remembered that they all sat there during dinner, smiling and nodding, essentially excluding me from my own mother's birthday party. Nathan gave me a detailed calendar of the twins' medication schedules and allergies, and Sophia replied with a list of their favorite foods and snacks. Activities. Daniel informed me that Leo needs a specific blanket for naps, and everyone assumed I was following their plan despite my obvious resistance. As I waited at my gate, more text arrived, saying, "We're counting on you, Ashley. The kids are already packed. Please keep in mind Noah needs his stuffed dinosaur for bedtime." I'd also left detailed instructions regarding Lily's feeding schedule. I turned off my phone and put it in my bag, so there would be no social media or email, just me, the beach, and a whole week of freedom. I felt terrible for the kids, who were totally innocent during this, but maybe it was time for their parents to take charge and become real parents instead of relying on their handy single sister as the default babysitter. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself, and oddly, it felt right as the plane rose higher. Austin sank behind the clouds, and with that, the weight of everyone's expectations was lifted, and I was finally free of updates. The first afternoon, I walked barefoot on the beach, letting the warm sand squish between my toes. When was the last time I did something like this? I swam in the hotel pool. The hotel suite was even nicer than the pictures. The balcony offered a great view of the limitless blue horizon, and I could hear the waves smashing on the shore. The palm trees swayed with the air as I stepped out of the airport. A book without interruptions. We had dinner at a small seashore restaurant, and no one needed me to cut their food or clean up messes. I enjoyed a glass of wine and watched the sunset from my balcony on my last morning in Florida, completely unconcerned with nighttime or morning schedules. I knew I would eventually have to turn on my phone again and deal with the chaos I had left behind, but I wasn't prepared for what I discovered when it finally turned on. It began buzzing constantly, voicemails, missed calls, and voicemails. There were hundreds of them with timestamps. My hands were a little unsteady as I started looking through the messages, which started at precisely 1 week ago in the morning. Lauren asked, "Where are you?" "We're outside your house." Emma Ashley then opened the door, and the children were getting restless. Nathan said, "Hey, we brought Lucas and Anna, like planned. Are you home?" Daniel Ashley asked, "What's going on?" Leo asked for his aunt. As I read the messages, I could clearly picture the scene. My sisters and cousins stood outside my empty house with 5 bewildered children, their suitcases carefully packed for the resort. Plans are falling apart around them, and the tone of the messages quickly changed from confusion to panic. "Ashley, this isn't funny. Where are you? Pick up your phone. What are we supposed to do with the kids? You can't just vanish like this." Then, Lauren's messages turned nasty. "You selfish witch. How could you do this to us?" Isabella wasn't doing any better. "I can't believe you're so immature. You ruined Mom's birthday." Aunt Susan's messages made me cringe because I had never seen her use such language before. Mom's messages started later in the day. "Ashley, I'm really disappointed in you. After everything we've done for you, your dad rarely texted and sent a single message, and your mother is crying. I hope you're happy with yourself because the voicemails were awful. I could hear the anger, disappointment, and accusations in their voices. Messages from extended family members I hadn't spoken to in months all of a sudden appeared, and they all condemned my actions. You've always been so dependable. How could you do this to your family? Those poor kids? You've ruined everything." I sat in my peaceful hotel room. It was like meeting a whole new family member who has been hiding behind fake smiles and casually asks for favors without addressing any of them. I packed my bags and went to the airport because it was time to go home, but I wasn't the same Ashley who had disappeared a week earlier. Ashley might have apologized, making you feel guilty, or they might have tried to make things right, but Ashley was gone. I had just finished unpacking my beach clothes when I heard a violent beating on my front door before I could get to it. I heard a key spinning in the lock, so I had given my mother an emergency key years ago in case they came charging in like a furious storm. Mom led the charge, and Lauren and Isabella were all around her flanks, all of them with red faces and furious eyes. The calm atmosphere I had built up in Florida suddenly disappeared. Update 3. Do you have any idea what you've done? Lauren yelled and stepped forward, ruining everything. I stood minding my living room, which is the same living room where I have frequently watched their kids. I had to cancel my own plans to accommodate their crisis. I had always been the reliable one, but Nathan and Daniel refused to stay with the kids, and Isabella spit out, referring to their spouses, so Lauren had to stay at home with all 5 of them while we went to the resort. She missed her mother's birthday because of you, and the entire trip was ruined, Mom said, her voice rising, so no one could enjoy it. All we did was talk about how you betrayed us and how you let everyone down. Your father couldn't even ski correctly, and he was very upset. They went on their tirade, talking over each other in an attempt to outdo the others. They expressed their disappointment and indignation, and the longer they talked, the more absurd everything seemed until something inside of me broke, but not in the way they had anticipated. I started laughing, and their charges stopped in the middle of a sentence, looking at me as though I had gone crazy. What's so funny, Mom? Isabella told me. You secretly planned this entire trip. I interrupted. You chose to watch your children without asking me. You grabbed my money and told me to take time off work. Then, just thinking that I'd go along with your intentions now that everything has happened, I brushed away tears of laughter from my eyes. Don't you see how ridiculous this is? Do you really not understand how absurd you all sound right now? Isabella said, fallen apart as a result of your presumptions. You're here accusing me of being a villain, but you've always helped before. Mom said, her voice smaller and confused, you've never said no. And that's precisely the issue I addressed because I helped all the time. You started taking advantage of me, and you stopped considering my feelings, plans, and life, which isn't true. Lauren argued, but her voice was unsure, so I raised an eyebrow and asked why you didn't include me in the planning. Wanted to go to the resort, but why did you think I would be happy to stay behind with 5 kids while everyone else had a good time? I tried to see if they were aware of or understanding how they treated me, but instead I saw their expressions hardening. You're being selfish, Mom said in an icy tone. You ruined my birthday and damaged your sisters. You have disappointed the children. This is not how I raised you, Mom. This whole situation is your fault, not mine. Mom drew herself to the fullest height, her visage stone-like. Mom wrote last week that if you feel that way, maybe I don't have a daughter named Ashley anymore. If that's what you want, then I replied gently. It had been 6 weeks since our last encounter in my living room, and during that time there had been no social media posts other than the occasional one from one of my family members saying that some people only think about themselves. This was followed by a dozen sympathetic replies from family members and acquaintances who only knew her side of the story, and Lauren said that family should always come first. Several months ago, these posts would have destroyed me. I would have spent hours creating responses in my head, losing sleep because of their work words. I wonder if they were right. What about now? I just scrolled past them occasionally with a tiny smile, noticing how predictable Isabella's latest post was, which included a lengthy paragraph about toxic people who destroy family bonds with their selfishness. Isabella did not tag me, of course, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Instead of spending my weekends waiting for urgent child care calls, I changed my routine. I joined a local book club, which seemed odd at first because we met in a coffee shop on a Saturday morning. Last week, I planned another vacation, a trip to Europe in the spring, and I didn't need to confirm anyone's schedule or make sure it wouldn't conflict with others' demands. I simply found a good deal and occasionally took it during quiet times, I believe. I miss my nieces and nephews, but not in the way they were used against me. I hope that when they get older, they will realize that maybe they will see the same patterns in their lives and make a different decision. I still have the emergency key that Mom used that day, but every time I think about it, something stops me. Maybe there is a part of me that hopes that one day they will realize how unfair their demands and behavior were, how they took advantage of my feelings for them, and that kids will know that being a family does not entail, for the first time in my life, I am putting myself first, and I am not waiting for that day to come. I am not putting my life on hold in the hopes of their acceptance or understanding, but I am putting myself first, and it feels right. Yesterday, I calmly withdrew from another commitment, which some may call selfishness. My family certainly does. But I've learned that there is a difference between being selfish and stepping away from people who don't value you for more than what you can do for them is sometimes the healthiest thing to do. As I unwind in my quiet haven and study travel guides for my upcoming trip across Europe, I've come to the realization that the silence that once seemed so threatening now feels liberating. The blank spaces on my calendar that used to make me anxious now feel like there are possibilities that I'm not just the dependable aunt, the ideal daughter, or the helpful sister any longer. And for the first time in my life, actually, it feels like enough. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and click the bell to be notified when more startling real-world tales occur in your area.